since we're waiting, I'd like to speak a little bit, just for a second, regarding our traditions as an Indigenous woman of North America. Um, we start with a prayer, which I already did for our group, and to be successful and sharing our hearts with each other, and so that we can share the important things that we want each other to know, and in a good way. So you may see smoke every once in a while going up, because we burn sage for this, so that we will have a successful meeting.
Thank you for that prayer and blessing. That was beautiful. Thank you so much.
Yes. I was getting ready to say that's like the most perfect way to get this started, because that's what we're talking about today, is around placekeeping and recognizing our traditions. So thank you very, very much for that. I was literally just getting ready to say, I think we could probably get started, because the folks rolling in have sort of slowed down, and people will join us as they see fit. But it is now officially 5 after the hour, so I think we can get started. My name is Dawn Arrington. I am the Place-Based Strategies Manager at ioby in our backyards. And my work surrounds basically everything that we do that's around place-based work. And that's really big and encompassing. But I was struck to really have a discussion around placekeeping versus placemaking. And this has come together. We have a great set of panelists joining us today. You'll also see Austin from ioby here, and he's gonna be keeping a track of the chat. So if there are things in the chat that you want to say, or questions that you might want to ask our panelists later on, please put it in the chat so we can address those comments and questions later in the program. Just some general housekeeping. This is being recorded, so for those that are joining us, we can send this back out, but then also for anyone that could not make it but registered, we can send that out to them as well. Let's see. I said Austin's monitoring the chat. We're being recorded, and just our general outline for the discussion today. We will have a quick definition of what placemaking is versus placekeeping, and then I will do a very quick intro of all of our panelists that are joining us today, followed by some Q&A moderated by myself, and then if there's some questions that are out there in the audience, we'll take those with Austin. And then we'll follow it up. We'll close it out by just letting you know about some opportunities that ioby has currently for match programming, and then we'll call it a day. So let's get right into it. Let's go to the slide that talks about placekeeping versus placemaking. I really hate reading for people, but sometimes I realize, like, being the daughter of a mother, sometimes I have to read stuff for her. So I do just want to use my voice and just talk about like our definitions of placemaking versus placekeeping. Creative placemaking has been described as a process of community development that leverages outside public, private, and nonprofit funding to strategically shape and change the physical and social character of a neighborhood using arts and cultural activities. Where placekeeping has come into the usage as a counter to placemaking. Placekeeping as the active care and maintenance of a place and its social fabric by the people who live and work there. It's not just preserving buildings, but keeping the cultural memories associated with a locale alive. while supporting the ability of local people to maintain their way of life as they choose. And so what does that look like in practice? And that's what we're going to be here talking about. So I would like to introduce to you our wonderful panelists, and I'm going to read their bios for you because they're all wonderful. So first up, we have Maria Cristina Morales, is a two-spirit working class Indigenous and Mexican American, Wamoon. She is the founder and president of Arco Iris Earth Care Project, a conservation organization that stewards 400 acres of Ozark wilderness according to Indigenous Earth Care principles. Maria Cristina is a curandera, a traditional Indigenous healer, a state licensed master massage therapist, an herbalist, and a ceremonial leader. For many years, she has opened her off-grid home base, Santurio Arco Iris, to BIPOC and LGBTQ2S plus people who need safe healing spaces and seek to learn Indigenous environmental ethics. For the last 5 years, Maria has been writing her memoirs and teaching. Her book is scheduled to be published through the University of Arkansas Press in early 2024. Joining her is Elise Ashworth. Elise works as an administrator and grant writer for Arco Iris Earth Care Project, a conservation and environmental education nonprofit deeply rooted in the practice of traditional ecological knowledge. She is a resident steward at Santurio Arco Iris, an off-grid intentional community in the Ozark Mountains. Elise is passionate about moving money as medicine towards organizations doing impactful work in racial justice, community building, and environmental healing. And here in Cleveland, Ohio, where I'm located, we have Kezra Hader. Kezra grew up in Chicago with immigrant parents from Pakistan. She had a lovely public school education in the suburbs of Chicago, where she was the only dark-skinned person until the 10th grade. She went to university in Chicago and got an engineering degree. There were very few women engineers in the 80s. She moved to Northeast Ohio about 25 years ago with her husband and 2 children. They used to drive past the cultural gardens, and their children would call out all the countries with gardens. And then they would ask, where's the Pakistani garden? She has spent a lifetime being unique and the other. She believes our next generation deserves an environment where cultural diversity is the norm. She tries to work with all city and county organizations to promote inclusivity so her community is truly beautiful. And then finally, from the West Coast, we have Ade Neff. Ade Neff is the founder of Ride On, bike shop and co-op located in the heart of Leimert Park. He's not only passionate about bicycles, but he believes that bikes offer a simple solution to many of our community's complex problems. His mission is to encourage cycling as an outlet for improving one's personal health and the health of our environment. Bikes can help save money on transportation and can provide endless miles of fun with family and friends. He has over 18 years of significant and progressive experience in developing a wide range of community programs in the South Los Angeles area. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you all. All right. And so again, I'm very old school. I print everything out so I can make sure that I'm reading everything properly. And so I kind of just want to, I read these introductions, but I think that I can't do you justice. So I'd like for each of you to just take a moment to self-introduce yourself. And we'll start in the same order that I read through. So Maria, Maria, you're up first. And again, I really want to thank you for the prayer at the beginning of this session.
Thank you. I am from an urban environment. I grew up in Dallas, My people are Coahuilateco, indigenous to North America, from in the southern part of Texas and northern part of Mexico. And the situation in the cities, as most people of color know, can be like a war zone. You don't know what's going to happen next and who's going to die next. And so when my baby daughter was born, I decided that I was not going to expose her to that environment and brought her here to Northwest Arkansas, Ozark Mountains, which I was led by a vision to come here and live deep in the wilderness, and began an intentional community here of women and children of color survivors. And when we came here, there was nothing but forest. And so we began a small village and started from the beginning again to reclaim our original selves, besides that, and heal from those traumas, those urban traumas. So being here in the Ozarks brought thousands and thousands of people, little by little, here into the Ozarks to do ceremony, do what is called sweat lodge. In our culture, it's called temescal, and it is a way of purification and healing. But it teaches us a lot about community. It teaches us about sustainability and taking care of the earth.
Elise, how did you get involved with this work?
Yeah, so I became involved with Archimedes Earth Care Project about 2 years ago. The history and the mission and the values of this organization really resonated with me. I work as an administrator. I came on as a grant writer. And something that I saw at the beginning of working with this organization is that there's so much land that we steward here, and that Maria Morales was able to begin that process. It was just the funding aspect that was needing work, so we could bring more people here, have more programs, teach environmental education to more individuals, and build community in our wider sphere. And it's been a blessing to be here.
Beautiful. Kezra, tell us how you went from being an engineer mom of two to, a cultural gardener, and what are the cultural gardens?
Yeah, the Cleveland Cultural Gardens are a 100-year-old institution, and they're built on land that was donated by John G. Rockefeller for the purpose of promoting peace and, enjoying the environment. And he kind of didn't set the stage, but he did envision an international use of the space. So part of the garden has been dedicated towards, part of the space that he donated has been dedicated towards the spirit of peace through mutual understanding. So each culture will come forward and present, like in an outdoor museum setting, what their culture represents and how they can share their history, their, great achievers throughout time with the local people that come to visit the garden. People come to the garden for all sorts of reasons. It's a very peaceful place to walk through. It is very enlightening. You can take with you as much knowledge as you feel you can absorb, or just visit one space and just sit there and, appreciate the beauty and the nature of it, and come back another day to absorb some more. This was what the vision was. And the Pakistani community decided to become part of this, because like you read, that my children were driving through the garden and they said, where's, our representation? And I have gone through my whole life without being represented. And we made use of the fact that the Buchanan community has been in this area of Northeast Ohio since about the 60s. And so we decided that we needed to share with our fellow Northeast Ohio neighbors and, colleagues that, what do we stand for? What are we all about? So that we're not so foreign to them. And we want to be recognized as your neighbor. And, like ioby stands for in your backyard, we're right in your backyard. And we would like to be understood. So that was the whole purpose of setting up the garden, so that people come here and understand us.
Beautiful. Thank you. A day. So like cycling, right? I don't necessarily always equate cycling in like urban areas and honestly people of color and how that is placekeeping. But we are going to talk about that in a minute. But I would love to know, 18 years ago, you've been doing this for, nearly 2 decades. How did this come about for you?
So I guess I've always had a love for bicycles. I was born and raised in Haiti in Haiti. And, my first memories of growing up is on a bicycle in Haiti. I grew up in Boston, so I never owned a car until I actually moved to Los Angeles. So it was cycling and public transportation. That was my way of getting around the city. When I moved to LA, of course, didn't have a car then, so I'm familiar with bikes, got a bike, but people treated you like you were dirt in Los Angeles. Riding a bike is like, what are you doing? You need a car. And, people really make you believe. And also the infrastructure is set up so that you really feel like you need a car to get around Los Angeles. So I did that, got a car, went through the whole process. But about 20 some odd years ago, though, I went back to school to get a master's. And in working on getting a master's degree in urban sustainability, I had a car that I couldn't afford anymore. I was getting tickets on a car accident, all these kind of crazy things. I was like, all right, enough of cars, I'm done. Get rid of a car, get me a bike. And it would also allow me to just concentrate on getting through this master's program, right? Because, now I don't have a car, I can't go anywhere, anytime. I have to be really discerning of where I'm going, how I'm going to get there. Do I really want to go? If I need to be there, I'll ride my bike there. If not, then I'm staying home, right? And so within that process, and also looking at social justice lenses through the program, right? And really seeing how the infrastructure in Los Angeles was terrible for pedestrians and cyclists alike, right? So I work with different organizations just to improve the conditions of the streets in LA for cyclists and pedestrians. And that one thing led to another. One of the biggest projects that I did, actually, we raised funds through ioby, was turning an intersection that's pretty dangerous in Los Angeles into like a musical instrument, an art piece. So we installed beat making machines at the lights at the intersection. We extended the sidewalk so people could cross the streets quicker. We installed a scramble walk so you could cross traffic, all cars stop, and then people can cross the streets. So we did all this thing, and we had events all around it, and it was really fun. The unfortunate thing is nothing ever happened with that piece, with that area. And the idea was we got the community involved, the city involved, and they were supposed to raise funds to actually implement what we designed, but it still hasn't happened there. But we're still working on doing all kinds of stuff. And right now, one of the projects I'm working on is actually identifying historic places that Black and brown folks have been in Los Angeles and their significance, and mapping all that out. So we're doing a cultural mapping in Los Angeles right now, which I'm really excited about.
Well, I'm going to keep it with you for a second there, because I am very curious about how, like, when you heard about this webinar today, like, had you heard of placekeeping before? How would you define it? Like, was this like, oh, well, I'm doing this already? Or, just tell me like your understanding of placekeeping versus placemaking. And did you even consider yourself a practitioner of either?
Yeah, I was familiar with place making, right? Several organizations in South LA that I work with have been doing that type of work. So in collaborating with them, I became familiar with the idea and realizing, oh, I've been doing this. I actually kind of been doing this all my life. It's one of those things, right? Even getting a master's in urban sustainability, and in certain conversations, I'm like, yo, as an immigrant, right? In a new space, you tend to lean on each other heavily, right? So you're still in Haiti, somebody's out here in Boston. Hey, I have a place you could stay. I have a place where you can get a job, and then there's a whole community built. I remember growing up and guys would come by the house that couldn't get work, but they had stuff that they would sell, so they come by and present it to the family and like, look here, yeah, I want this, I want that. And also remember growing up where like my mother never drove. And so when she would go shopping to the market, there was always a community of folks that had station wagons or a car that would actually be a ride share program for the women that actually went around to do their grocery shopping, right? So there's all these like little things as an immigrant growing up that I saw that I started to see in a different lens going through this urban sustainability project. My father was always heavily involved in community, so I felt like growing up in a community, I had to be of service to the community. Otherwise, am I really part of this community, right? And it's just like all these things that I saw my father do, my parents do, and growing up in this community. So it's like, it just part of the way of being when you're in a community for me, right? So placemaking, placekeeping, all that stuff is part of the whole.
Sounds like it's like the culture, right? It's
Yeah.
the culture. It's placekeeping is not just physical, it's also like keeping of the culture.
Right.
Maria, Elise, same question for you. It really, like, when I was reading the definition, I was like, oh, that's Arco Iris. Like, so tell us a little bit more, like, when you first heard placekeeping versus placemaking, like, what are your opinions on those terms and how they're used, and really, like, did you see yourselves as placekeepers? Like, were you early adopters of that language?
Well, it's just been given that name. Honestly, we, as he was saying earlier, um, we've been doing it all along. It's just been given a name, a couple of names. For Arcoiris, land stewardship, um, and a sustainable, safe space for women of color and their children is, and actually acquiring it in an original traditional way by sitting down with the so-called buyers of this land. I don't call them owners because we don't believe in ownership, but we did acquire it legally so that we are placekeepers, placemakers, by having stewardship for women and children of color and queer people. As a two-spirit woman, that is, I've been here almost 50 years, and now we do have we have built an office, a homes. My two children have small cabins. Elise has a tiny house. We have a bunkhouse, a clinic, in this place that had nothing. And so there's somewhere for people to come that need that help. So that's my take on it, that it is just been given, labeled, something that peoples have been doing for generations.
Yeah. And I would see Maria as the placemaker and me as one of the many placekeepers that revolve around our land community, Santuario Archimedes, and the nonprofit Archimedes Earth Care Project. And I also think it's important to explain that Archimedes means rainbow in Spanish, and that represents our queer background and also Maria's indigenous ancestry, cultural and spirituality practices. And our work with the nonprofit and the land that we steward, it revolves around, indigenous land stewardship, matriarchal and queer leadership, decolonization, and holding and creating the space that exists in opposition to the capitalist, white supremacist, patriarchal structure that we all exist within. It's this place to dream, to heal, to build together, to imagine, to manifest. And it's been really beautiful to be a part of that and to also hold space for it and resource it, because that's how I see my participation within this organization, is resourcing the ideas of the queer people of color who have made this space.
I would like to add that with allying with all of our peoples, and especially having white allies in our organization, we were prophesized, I was taught by elders that Indigenous people would suffer for the remembering of lost spiritual knowledge that the white people had lost, and that we would suffer so that they would regain their spiritual awareness, and that they would come to us seeking that. What are the original laws, universal laws of stewardship? And so working together, I find that it's very, very important that the resources that our white allies provide. Many Indigenous people have language barriers, they have educational barriers, they have poverty, economic barriers, cultural barriers. There's so many things, and having allying with our white allies helps bridge those gaps, because they often come from, well, just being white gives you privilege, but my people didn't have years of education. I only had elementary education, and I studied on my own. And then having others, and Elise is a great addition, but we have other allies that we work with that are helping us build our people of color and queer community here.
Man, this conversation is just like getting super rich here, because something that you said, Maria, around, and I wrote this down, like land stewardship versus land ownership, right? And so I do want to circle back to that with you, but that leads me into a question for Kezra, because, and same question for you around placekeeping and placemaking. And I remember when I first reached out to you to join this panel, and I said, would you do a creative placekeeping webinar with us? And you were like, sure, but what is it? And and so then I was like, but you're doing it. And so I really appreciate Maria's inclusion of language around land stewardship, right? And so versus like land ownership. So tell me like once I, sent you the text and said, well, you're already doing this, tell me about like what you hear in placekeeping sort of versus placemaking. And sometimes they are cousins, right? But I'd love to hear your take on this work and how you see it relating to, yeah. I'll let you do the talking on this one.
Well, I loved how she said land stewardship, because we do not, the Pakistani Cultural Garden does not own the land that we are building upon. But the whole idea is that we use the land and we promote cultural diversity on the land, but it is just, we are the temporary caretakers of the space. It does not belong to us, it belongs to the people. Technically, it belongs to the city, but when you think about the investment that goes into it, it belongs to all the people that have put in their hard-earned dollars, their time, their energy into stewarding this, so the next generations can be more fluent in the cultural diversity that exists in the world, so that we can be citizens of the world and not be just limited to, I'm from this space and I'm from that place, but we are all the same. And I think it's a privilege that we were given this area to live in and this space to promote our culture in. And sometimes it does look like we're doing place making, because we are making a garden for Pakistan where it did not exist. But in reality, I think you're correct. This is placekeeping, because we're keeping in line with the culture of this space and opening it up for new, areas to showcase themselves. So I'm very privileged that we got a chance to do that. And I think the people of Northeast Ohio are privileged that they get to learn about my culture and my background and my history and all the contributions that have been made by my peoples, I guess. But, so that we're not considered the others. And we live in the area, we contribute to society. When the Pakistani community emigrated to the United States, they came at a time when John F. Kennedy, the then president, opened it up to Southeast Asia, but he set a precedence that only, educated people will be able to come here, doctors, engineers, scientists. So, the people that came here, it was kind of, the privileged class came here. But now, when you look at it and say, well, are the privileged class that came here, are they elitist or are they contributing members of society? Do they mesh in? Do they join in with the people? And this is what I would like to promote. Yes, we're doctors and engineers and scientists, but we're your friends. We're your neighbors. We live next door to you. Our car breaks down just like everybody else's, and we need a ride to the service station the same way as everybody else does. And, if your husband's sick, we want to go and bring your groceries just like everybody else does. So I think that we want to eliminate the other and say, we're your neighbors. We want to, be friends. And here, if you're afraid of us, here, come and learn about us. So I think placekeeping is in line with the cultural gardens and all that they promote.
So I'm gonna keep it with you, Kezra, for a quick second. So, you're a transplant to Northeast Ohio, originally from Chicago, daughter of Pakistani immigrants, and so like, if how did you find the Pakistani community? How did you connect with your community? And then how does where does the garden fit into that for like newcomers? How do you are you leveraging the garden to be able to like build community and maintain community? Because I think that like we can't continuously just keep building. We have to do some of the stewardship, right? The stewardship of maintaining the community. So tell me a little bit about like your transplanting from Chicago to Northeast Ohio and how you found your community, and then how the garden fits into that.
Well, the Pakistani community is used to be very isolated and stayed to themselves a lot, and that was unfortunate. And so it was not hard to find them because they keep to themselves, and they do integrate in the religious community. So if you go to the places of worship, and I'm a Muslim, so we went to the mosque and we met people there. And then we realized, how is it that, we can make a difference by working together? And I guess the earliest mosques that were here were started in the 60s. And I just got a little history lesson the other day from the person that kind of like worked on that. And he said it used to be there's a mosque on Detroit Street, and it used to be the home of the mayor of a city called West Cleveland, which does not exist anymore now. But a long time ago, it used to be his home. So it's like an historical landmark, because it used to be, his home and stuff. So that is where they started out in the 60s. And so we came here in the 90s, and it has evolved. And but when you go back to the elders of the society and you connect with them to learn from them and say, where were we at and where do we want to go? Now, I did go to them to learn more about our history in this area, but when I wanted to start this project, I did go to the Cleveland History Center to learn about, all the different communities that came here. They are registered with the History Center, but our people were so isolated that did not register with them. So I introduced them to our community, and I said, here we are. We came here in the 60s, and currently we have about 200 families in Cleveland. And if you encompass all of Northeast Ohio, we are about 400 to 500 families. If you go all the way over to Youngstown and down to Canton and west to Findlay and all of that, there's a good amount of families that are in this area. And we at the Pakistani Cultural Gardens, we do reach out. We make ourselves available to new people that move into the area. There are other, a lot of little institutions, like people come to the cultural gardens and ask about, oh, I'm a new person in the area. Can you recommend somebody that would help me to settle in and to learn the neighborhoods and, where to shop and where to buy things and stuff like that. So I do make myself available to them. There are other online magazines and newspapers that are available, and I do make myself available to those people who, get newcomers come and reach out to them. So we do try to incorporate new people into the fabric of the Pakistani community that already exists. When we started out, we did do our research, and like I said, we went to the History Center, try to find out all about our past and everything. But there was an organization that already existed here, and it was called the Pakistani American League, and they did have cultural events that were set up for just Pakistani people to get together, have a movie night, have out people from other cities come in to perform, or just to get together on holidays and things like that. So we did approach them and say, well, we're looking into creating this project. Would you be interested in joining us? And there was discussion for like a good year, about them joining us going off on our own. Then it became clear that our project was going to be a little bit more involved than they wanted to get into. So we established our own 501c3, and we went forward. And we decided that we will go forward and set up get an attorney and all of that good stuff. But the thing to keep in mind is that we are just temporarily on this earth, and what's going to happen when we no longer are able to, we would like to continue building it, but as soon as we're done, what happens when people retire and move to, where their kids are living, and they're no longer able to take care of this piece that they have, set forward to create. So we have been looking into, like we are very close to Case Western Reserve University, and we had looked into handing, or not handing, but sharing this piece with, there's a Pakistani Students Association there, with them, and saying, will that community take over the maintenance of this place? So we have thought about this, or the other option is to hand it over to the original organization that did do cultural events here. And after, we've gone through the large task of creating the space, would they be somebody that would maintain it and keep up the, the dialogue that we've started and all of that. So we're kind of like torn between actually three places, because the other thing is to maintain our integrity and our identity, and perhaps forge forward with young people that will really want to go forward with maintaining this. And it's a choice that's going to have to be coming up in a few years, because we're all getting old and we all have our health challenges and stuff. So that is something to think about. But I look forward to completing this project, and I look forward to hopefully making a change in the community. And I think that placekeeping is in line with what we are doing, because we have worked within our community here to raise our money. We have approached local organizations like yourself. We work with the councilmen of the area. We work with county offices and city offices and everything. So we're doing our best to use the local infrastructure that's there. And I think since they are invested in, our success, I think that we should capitalize on that and say, okay, you want your city to look beautiful, which it does. And the cultural gardens are, like a jewel for Cleveland. So we're very excited about it going forward and being awesome. And hopefully everyone that lives far away will be able to come to Cleveland someday and visit us. This will be very nice.
I love that. And that actually, like, there's so much here. But oh, thank you, Austin. This actually, your story made me sort of amend the question that I had for a day, because I was listening to what you said earlier a day about like the challenges with getting the project sort of like across the finish line. And then, to what end is the actual finish line? Is that the new starting point? So tell us a little bit more about that project that you crowdfunded with on ioby, and why is art and music so integrated into the work that you're doing around biking and bike culture and safety, honestly, like slowing down. Listen, I live at a corner and it's a residential street and everybody blows through the stop signs and it drives me crazy, like every day. And just like, it's just a stop sign, can we just stop? But seriously, just tell us a little bit more about that, but also those challenges, and then like what's next? What's the next step? Because I just listening to Kezra, and it's beautiful to find out that like they're thinking about like who's going to take this over, who's going to keep stewarding and keeping these spaces when they're not here. Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, so I'll actually address the last part before I talk about the project. So my bicycle shop is in Leimert Park in Los Angeles, which is the arts and cultural hub of LA. It's probably no other place like it in the country, really, with regards to Black arts and culture, right? So I'm literally at the heart on the main street of it. And what we were able to do with the help of Holly Mitchell's supervisor, Holly Mitchell's office, was actually purchase our building. So 4 shop owners came together and purchased our property in a land trust, so that we define what the space is and we define what the rent is gonna be for folks, that it's affordable, that the ones that are here when the purchase happened get to stay here. And we have to redevelop just because of the nature of the things, you know, the amount of money it costs for us to get the property and how we need to make sure we bring enough money for it to upkeep it and to stay here, right? And so, but all that's done on the land trust. We have a board that manages it, right? And so that's, I think, one of the ways that we can do approach things like in placemaking and making sure that we're here and that there's a pathway and there's a direction for folks that come after us when we're gone, right? And you know, everything's defined by the bylaws and all that kind of a thing. So that was excuse me 1 second. My daughter is here picking up the car.
I love this. And this is exactly the reason why I'm doing this from my co-working space and not from home. Oh, wait. Okay. He'll be right back. That is perfectly fine. Because I do want to make sure that we hear the rest of his story. But I did see some vigorous head nodding over there from Maria and from Elise when Ade was talking about you know, keeping things affordable and figuring out ways to, you know, unfortunately own a space so people can leave you alone, so you can do what it is that you know how to do. But yeah, I'm going to get back to those vigorous head nods because I see Ade is back. So that was a quick pickup.
Yeah. So it was important for us to do that, right? Because one of the issues in Leimert Park was the issue of gentrification. You know, folks moving out, people coming in, buying up property, and we were at risk of not being in Leimert Park. And we were the folks that actually kind of like develop and establish a culture. It's like, yo, we need to do something about this, right? And we need to do something about it quickly before we're not able to, and then we're not able to recognize the space that we're in, right? And so I think the best way for us was to do that was to actually come together, form a land trust to be able to purchase this property. So as another land trust also here in South LA that was trying to buy the mall, you know, so one of the things that I'm really excited about seeing the land trusts being formed and a lot of cooperatives also being formed in South LA. I'm part of a group of folks that's trying to promote a lot more cooperative. Like my shop is a cooperative. You know, I didn't want to do like a business where like, you know, I owned everything. I'm the boss. It's like, yo, you know, the conversation's been going on, right? The ownership isn't really the way indigenous folks do things, right? Where we see ourselves more as stewards of things, right? So I wanted to present another idea in South LA as to how we can actually conduct business and not be so capitalist in our interactions, right? I think business and commerce and exchange has been going on for eons, but capitalism is very new, right? And this extreme capitalism that we're dealing with is, we see what the results of it is, right? So how do we address that? What's the contribution? So this bike shop is my contribution to it, to that conversation, how we can sidestep that, you know? So, and also to the project that you had mentioned, music is my life. It's like, I'm a DJ, I'm a dancer. And I think music is the highest, one of the best ways you can praise the Most High, right? Singing, dancing, playing music is one of the creative ways that we can give praise, right? And so for me, it's always part of what I do, part of my life. In fact, this is a bicycle shop, but I've started salsa classes in this bicycle shop. So you can come and learn salsa. Now it is an event that outgrew the bike shop. Now it's another location in LA every Sundays. And then the next thing I started was like I love dancing, like I mentioned, I love house music. And so I started a house thing in the bicycle shop. Now it's one of the biggest parties in LA. It's at a rooftop Hollywood location. And it's free for folks, and we try to keep it free. And we just encourage people to come dance and express themselves and liberate themselves. And it's a safe space for everybody, right? So in doing the project at the at the intersection in South LA, it was just like, music's definitely going to be a part of it, because I'm a DJ. I love music. Who doesn't like music, right? And so let's have music involved in it, and let's make sure people can actually participate in the music. So put up a couple of beat making machines. While you're waiting for the light to change, you're making a beat with the person across the other side, and there's a piano on the corner. So like, if you know how to play the piano, you can come and play. There's a DJ further down, you can play music. But at the same time, we're talking about the safety issues, right? Hey, why did you paint the sidewalk this way? Oh yeah, that's extending the sidewalk so the time between one side to the other is shortened, right? And so at the event, actually, I'm on the sidewalk on my phone, and I hear somebody blowing their horn at me. I'm like, what's going on now? I look up. There's a guy on the sidewalk with his car, because we slowed down traffic, to a standstill, which was the point, right? And he's like, move out the way. I'm like, I'm on the sidewalk. It's like, move out. I'm not moving. I'm on the sidewalk, right? So we got into an argument. I never moved, so he had to get off the sidewalk and get back in traffic, and so later on went to him and was like, look, this is why we're doing this. We need to slow down this traffic. People are dying at this intersection. In fact, a few months ago, there was a young lady that died at and they call it a takeover. So what they do is these cars take over the intersection, and they do donuts and burn rubber at the intersection, right? It's become a big thing now, right? And a young lady was killed at that intersection. Now, had the city implemented those designs that we introduced, they wouldn't have the space to do the donuts. So then, it wouldn't happen. And I think that's one of the issues with, like you mentioned, the stop sign by where you live, or these streets, right? LA has some wide streets. And we can mitigate how fast people go just by the designing of the streets, of the landscape in the street, right? And I don't know what's happening with the city and the politicians that's like not making that happen, because we, like being in the cycling world, we know too many people that get hit by cars, hit and runs. I've gotten hit by a car, and the person just took off. I was like, oh, you should at least check if I'm okay, right? And that it's a crime, but nobody's getting, prosecuted for hit and run. And so there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And I don't understand sometimes what the roadblocks are, because we are talking about life, when we're talking about life. And so for me, it's hard to understand sometimes what, a lot of the things that we introduce aren't happening, but we keep pushing and we keep doing the work.
Wow. Yeah. My mom literally just recently told me about how she witnessed a guy hit a older gentleman who was on a bike, and it happened in front of a police officer. And the guy was like, oh, I'm just gonna drive on. And the police officer stopped him and made him go back and like help the guy up. He didn't physically harm him. He was okay. He kind of bumped him, I guess. I mean, if that's a thing. And he was like, no, you're gonna take this man home now. Like, you're gonna put this man put his bike in the back of your truck. You're gonna take him home. You're gonna get to know this person, because like you said, it's life. And I was really impressed that like the police officer was the one who, orchestrated, like in real time, something, right? Like the humanity of that moment. Because it could have went, in a completely opposite direction. So I was like, are you sure that this happened? Like, did you wish that this happened? She was like, no, I'm telling you, it happened right here, this corner. And I was like, Okay, all right, well, let's work it out. So I'm doing a time check. I want to transition to some of our audience questions. And so I'm gonna let Austin take on that part of our program right now.
Hi again to all of our panelists, and hi to all the attendees. Yeah, I'm going to jump in with some of the questions that have come in. But first, I kind of wanted to give a shout out to Kaisra, because while we were on this call, her current ioby project just fully funded and reached its goal. I'm going to share it in the chat so everyone can see. So just wanted to say congrats on that. It's really exciting. And that kind of transitions into one of the main questions that we have that keeps coming up, which is, what was your experience with crowdfunding in your community? You know, a lot of the times we hear from people who are just wondering some of the tips on the best way that they can engage their community. And a lot of the questions we've got today have revolved around crowdfunding tips. So yeah, what are some of your experiences with crowdfunding in your community? What would you all like to share with some of the people who may be on the call, who are looking to reach their goal and engage their community?
Is that for anybody?
Yeah, anyone can take it.
Well, I guess I can go. I think the ioby had a training program for crowdfunding, which was crucial to our success in crowdfunding for that project at the intersection. And it was things like I didn't know prior to taking this training. I just thought, you're raising money, you put out the word you're raising money, and then there you go. But there was a whole process of building a team, assigning people a certain amount of folks to reach out to, assigning each people a certain amount to ask for at the beginning, and building I guess, building a small amount in your coffers so that when you actually go live with your project, that people see there's funds already there. And so they're more apt to give, because now they want to help you reach your goal, as opposed to going there and seeing zero and they're like, well, I'm not going to be the first to give. Let's see how far they get before I actually give. People be like, oh, they got this amount, so let me help them get there and, inch them closer to their goal. I think that was like crucial and very important to our success in the strategy that we learned in our crowdfunding.
ioby was very helpful for us also. They encouraged us to go and reach out in social media and post the crowdfunding, links and things like that. So I hadn't used it as much before because I'm not that that savvy in social media, but we did add some newer board members that are a bit younger, and they did post this on social media, and we did get quite a bit of response. And I think that's correct. When you see that other people are contributing, you are more motivated to contribute. And then this person that put it up in social media, he'd give like an update. Oh, look, we're this far away from reaching our goals. And then like 2 days later, he'd say, oh, look, we're so much closer. So I think that does make a big difference, motivation. And amazingly, I reached out to a friend that I went to university with 40 years ago. And, I hardly see her, talk to her maybe once a year, once every 2 years. And last year she was asking me what I'm working on. And I said, I'm working on this project. And she goes, well, yeah, I'm going to donate to that sometime. And so I just sent her the link yesterday and she donated straight away. And I was like, a friendship from 40 years ago, finally, you're interested in what they're doing and I'm interested in what she's working on and stuff. So it's amazing what, just the motivation of having your resources matched. That's such a motivator. So thank you to ioby for providing that. And I'm very excited that we reached our goal. So this is exciting. And I think everyone should use social media to advertise their projects. Even if you're not looking for dollars, you are looking for resources. People do things that you never realized that you needed. It's a great way to promote your project and let people know this is out there. I mean, that whole bicycles thing. That's like so amazing. And I would never have thought of going to an intersection and having music there and everything. This is so exciting to see what other people are doing. And, faith healers and all of that, that's using natural resources to promote, healthy lifestyles, all of that stuff. So exciting. And I think tell people what you're doing and people will join in. And, takes two hands to make something go forward. So there you go.
I'm just so proud because Kesra was one of my coach, like I coached her and she's saying all this stuff, which means that she listened. So I also want to like promote ioby just a little bit further, because our coaching, our word, the phone calls that we make with you, and like we are really telling you stuff that like works clearly. I'm just so excited. And I mean, I got to meet Elise and Maria through an initial phone call, just, having a conversation about what it is that they're doing and the work that they're doing. That's how we get to know, people like them and have them on webinars like this. So it's not only our curriculum, but then it becomes like this informal network of people that you can learn from and learn new perspectives. So I'm just so proud. I'm so happy right now. And yeah, and at least you could probably speak to this around like the difference between, that traditional grant funding and writing grants that are like connected to a deadline versus like, sort of the natural way that a campaign or a project funding would move through individual donors in your community.
I do want to start off and say that it's been an honor to sit in this room with you all and hear all these amazing projects you guys have been, doing in your community. It's been very inspiring and motivating. But yeah, the crowdfunding aspect is something that we've done in the past, especially around a spring development project that we did last year, where the water in the main spring that we use to, water the gardens, have within the community, and also in the land trust space, the pipes were crushed underground. So we were able to spearhead this successful campaign. We reached out to our community members, and I do want to echo what has been said in the past about the importance of updates. That was a great way to get people excited about our project, feel like they are deeply embedded in the progression of it, and reaching out to networks. One of our largest donors was actually a past intern's parents who came across, our project after years since they were in this land space. And it just shows the importance of having good relationships with community members and keeping everyone within the loop and really digging into your mission and creating and keeping that space.
So we have another question here from Leslie, and the question is, in this work, you often have to hurry slowly, and it takes a long-term commitment. So how do you stay motivated? What advice would you give to a neighbor who might be at the beginning of their placekeeping work? And what about this time if we start with Maria, Christina, and Elise, and then we can work backwards?
What would I say to them is, if it's something that they passionately, it needs to be something that you're passionate about. And there's going to be some sacrifice because you're spearheading, you're opening the trail that hasn't been opened, and there's going to be opposition. But if you are determined that that it is a needed, as our sanctuary, santuario, it was a needed, very, very needed thing. It's easier to do. So it's having that passion behind it and creating allies. I have forgiven many our people have started for some time now doing different programs where they have traveled the Trail of Tears and have said ceremonies for all the people that died on that trail, for the people that managed the soldiers. There have been even generations of back of some of the survivors of the white people who drove the indigenous people across different places that have come and taken those walks and with them to make peace. Because when I arrived here, I was surrounded by white people that did not want us here at all. And they were pretty mean. I was just, I had a child. I was by myself when I began, and she was 5. And they were pretty heartless, honestly. But people gain respect if you continue regardless and don't give back what they put out. I refused to be invisible. I avoided conflict, but I refused to be invisible. I used to have one of my Black sisters that was, her name was Isis. She passed just a couple of years ago. She was here with me from the beginning. And the white people we would walk up and they would act like we didn't even walk by. They'd be sitting on a bench. And she'd stop and she'd say, "Morning, how are you doing?" And refuse to be invisible. And do it without creating more animosity. And the fact that we have a clinic here that everyone and anyone can come to. And I've had from every walk of life. So making those kinds of commitments with yourself, some integrity in terms of original ways of being, kind, but resilient and steadfast.
That's beautiful. Yeah, perseverance and resilience is incredibly important. I'd also like to say that having your chosen family, your community, your network, and being able to bounce ideas around together, to envision and dream together, that has been very helpful in sustaining my work. It takes a village. It truly takes a village. In the interest of time, I'll pass it on.
Ade, you have anything to say to that?
Yeah. So I think for me, in addition to what was said, right, I part of my approach is kind of like a selfish thing. I say sometimes, right, it's like I established a bike shop in Leimert Park because I rode a bike and I needed that service, right? And I figured, well, if I'm on a bike and I see other people on a bike that live around here, if I need the service, they probably need it too, right? And so I approached projects and things like, not that I'm outside of the community providing a service to the community, but that I'm in the community, I'm providing a service to myself and those people that are around me in my community as well, right? And that way I don't really get flustered or tired when things aren't moving as I would like for them. One, I understand that I'm not in control of anything, you know, and so, you know, just being patient and, you know, just following the path that's laid in front of me. Sometimes you're trying to do something where it's, you know, and you really want this to happen this way, but that's not how it's supposed to happen. But if you stay patient and listen to the universe, you will follow the path and things will happen as it should. So part of it is being patient, is definitely being patient and being able to listen to the universe and what is being laid in front of you.
Ezra, you want to bring it home? You have any comments towards that?
Sure, I think that's exactly correct, that you have to listen to the universe. You may have one timetable that you want to achieve what you want to achieve, and then hurdles are put in your path. And if you have the attitude that these are not really hurdles, but they're an opportunity to learn and for your community to grow properly. So, of course, the human being in us says, oh, this is a big hurdle and it's really stopping us now. Unfortunately, we had a board member who passed away at a very young age. And it was just very, very unsettling, and it was very upsetting. And that really put a standstill in our progress for the project. But we had to take some time to heal as a group and as a community, and to deal with that and to learn from it and to grow. And he was a very passionate person, and he had a lot of ambition, and he had set a different, like a larger goal for us to achieve. And we realized that we can't achieve that as a group without him. So we just lowered our expectations and we set the standards, like a smaller project. And it seemed to be a lot more doable. So it took us some time, but, the Supreme Being has a different path for you to take. And you have to be open to accept that path. And it took a while, but God opened our hearts and we were able to lower our expectations to a more achievable goal. And hopefully we're completing phase 1 of our project right now, and we're very excited about it. And, I think that the world has a different path for you to take than what you've originally set forward to. And I think the biggest thing is learning to accept that and then move forward. So.
That was really beautiful. Again, bravo to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us on this panel today. I'm going to have Austin pull up on the screen just quickly so we can tell you all about ioby and some opportunities that we have right now. As you heard, Kesra just met their goal, but that doesn't mean that you can't still give to their campaign. But she and the Pakistani Cultural Garden was participating in the Reimagining Communities match. This match program, it doubles donations for Black, Indigenous, and people of color, BIPOC, resident or BIPOC-led groups who are crowdfunding for projects that reimagine public spaces and infrastructure. And Arkansas and Ohio are some priority locations, so they were able to get their donations matched up to $5,000. Individual donations are capped at $500. And then we have another match in Northwest Arkansas, and though that's up to $15,000, and those are for projects that leverage or improve public spaces in Arkansas's Benton and Washington counties. And these projects can be led by residents or small local nonprofits. And residents bring their communities to life with their great ideas for positive impact. So if you live in Arkansas's Benton or Washington counties, this program will double donations up to $1,000 per donor. If you have some additional questions about either of those match programs, you can reach out to ioby.org. matches at ioby.org, or you can also go on to ioby.org/match. Those projects are, or you can learn more about our projects there. And again, if you have questions about any of the matches or how they work, please feel free to reach out to our match programs director at that email that you see there. We'll leave it up there just for like one more second. And again, I really want to thank everybody for taking some time out with us on a Wednesday afternoon. Hopefully the weather is as nice and as enjoyable where you all are as it is where I am today. Hopefully you get outside, get some fresh air, slow down, and take a breath, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. That's what come up.
Thank you.
Adios.